This is Chief Chat with our Fire Chief Dave Brogan and our Police Chief Lee Gavin. Welcome, gentlemen, to Chief Chat.
How are you doing today?
We're doing good. There's a lot to talk about and a lot of things happening within our community. That windstorm that we had, wow. I mean, that was, I think that has to have been one of the worst that we've had maybe in a long time. They said one of the worst in the last 100 years?
Certainly, it was one of the worst we've had in a long time. We ended up with over 100 calls that were not all related to the wind, but 100 calls in that 24-hour span for the crew on duty. So we've had that, I think maybe one other time that I can remember where we've had that many calls. So. And mixed in with all the calls, we had over 20 EMS calls that day that weren't necessarily related. There were 4 structure fires. 2 of them were pretty significant. 2 of them we were fortunate to get there quick and keep them really contained. So there were not a lot of damage, but still enough to put them out of their house.
What about the trees falling and the electrical wires and people being out of service?
Yep. We had there was so much of that. Like, I think this was Edison's record for the number of people that were left without power after a storm. And it did get cold afterwards too. So obviously down wires are very dangerous. Some people think that if it's not arcing, it might still be safe because you just see a wire laying there and it doesn't really look all that dangerous. Unfortunately, wires are extremely, extremely dangerous, and you can't just like tap a wire and you're going to be okay to see, which I've seen. People have done this, not our firefighters, but some citizens have in the past said, well, I tapped it to see if it was live or not. It doesn't work that way.
No, you don't do it that way.
No, you touch a wire one time and it will kill you.
Absolutely, absolutely. With all those calls, how were you able to service everyone? I know our emergency manager, Bob, who's also our camera person here today, he's involved with the CERT members.
Right.
I hear him talking about that a lot. Were they called in? I mean, how do you answer to all those calls with the amount of people that we have?
Well, we were fortunate where we had we have 3 squads always on duty now, along with our 2 engines, and we had enough manpower to actually put a 4th squad in service that day. So we had a large amount of manpower already on duty, just naturally throughout the day. And when that happens, we can pull one person off and put 2 pickup trucks in service, and still keep 4 squads, 2 engines, and 2 pickup trucks. And that was so we were very fortunate. The calls don't come in, even though there were over 100 calls, they don't all come in 10 minutes. I mean, it takes a little bit of time for people to discover the wires are down. Some of the wires are falling a little bit later. So the calls are spread out kind of throughout the day. We did at some point have a small list of wires, and sometimes you get there and find out there really isn't a big hazard. And the fire department needs to go check all of them out first. And so we'll check them out, notify the neighbors, tape them all off. Some of them we can't leave at all because they're just too dangerous. And other ones we'll tape off and then go on to the next one and make sure we get everything where we've notified the neighbors and we've secured the area the best that we can, and then move on to the next one. After that initial big mass of calls is kind of initially handled, that's when it comes into where do we need the CERT team to go out and kind of sit on some of these wires. And we had enough manpower and enough wires that were already getting handled as they came in that we didn't need any more manpower.
Wow,
so
okay.
Yeah, we handled it with our all Dearborn Heights firefighters, and we did have, like I said, there were 4 fires, and obviously those take a lot of
time.
manpower and time, and one of the contributing factors was the wind itself. Obviously, that was bringing the wires down. But then, if you had wind near a brush pile, then with that wind, it would make a small fire into a big fire, and then the fire's traveling and spreading. So it was there was a lot of factors that was
right, and 1 million people out of power, and I know it wasn't 1 or 2 or 3 days. I mean, it was for a continuous spread of time, like 5. Some people were out of power for 5 days.
That's right.
And it was pretty cold. It picked the coldest time
right.
to take the power out because I know lines for the hotel rooms were backed up. It took like people 2 hours just to get into a hotel room,
right.
and then the prices were.
Yeah, very high.
But that's another thing. But I know, and talking with Bob, because of course he is our emergency manager, they had some warming centers too. I think he he spent the night, what, 4 days was it, Bob? 4 days on a cot with the warming center. So you tell us about that. I mean, that was a wonderful thing to be able to bring people in and have them
that was another
protected.
big piece of it. So we have the initial rush of calls where there's the immediate threat to life, but then the temperatures did drop so much where you have to really watch out for your seniors and people who are living on their own, and now very, very cold houses. And so we needed something to do, and that's where, like you said, Bob and the emergency management plans came into effect. And so they did work together with Dearborn and get a warming shelter established, and they were working with the Red Cross, and Dearborn Heights was very well represented, where we had our citizens taken care of to the best that we could, getting out the word as well as we can to everyone that needed the help.
Absolutely.
And speaking about the hotels being crowded, you know, a lot of the residents vacate their home with no electricity. We ask our officers to keep an eye on the subdivision areas where these homes are vacant. So we are very fortunate. We did not have many homes broken into or larcenies or anything like that. Without the power, there's no alarm systems. People vacate their homes, but we really had no increase in crime, so that was sufficient.
Wonderful. We actually had an issue. We have a lake home out in Pinckney, and one of our neighbors called us and sent us a picture. We had this huge tree in the front. I mean, really huge. And it just toppled over, and it would have fell on our neighbor's home. But miraculously, there's these real two thin trees that were right next to it, and when it toppled, it fell on these two trees, and somehow these two thin trees just saved this other tree. But I think they're saying that because it was a warm winter and it was moist, with the wind, the ground was so moist and soft that trees were just toppling.
Trees didn't have the stability.
That's right.
Did we have anything like that in Dearborn? I mean, trees falling on cars and on homes. And
we had
like
some
that.
trees down on homes as well. That was I know of at least 2 or 3 where they had come down and damaged homes. Not completely destroyed them, but did cause quite a bit of damage. Shingles were blown up and off roofs. There was a lot of wind damage to the houses besides all the obvious initial problems with the electricity.
Traffic signals were out, you know, a lot of major intersections.
And that was really difficult trying to get around, and I guess hotels were really booked all the way from here to Frankenmuth. So I mean, they were like really jammed in and trying to accommodate everyone. And I know there was some price gouging too, which isn't very nice.
No, that's not very nice at all.
Yeah.
No.
But you know, people made it through. Before we get off this topic, I mean, what do you do? What do you do to protect yourself from that, or what do you do? I mean, there's generators. People have generators, but again, they're not that safe either.
Well, a generator is safe if you're running it properly. So
and if it's outside.
That's the part. Yeah, you can't have it.
Outside.
There were people that actually ran a generator inside their house, but you don't even run it in an attached garage. It's going to create carbon monoxide, obviously. So that's a danger in itself. It's also dangerous if you don't have it hooked up properly, because some people have an electrician, or they try to do it themselves, where they're going to run the generator outside, bringing power to the house, and then they need to have that installed by a qualified electrician who's going to be able to give them instruction on you need to shut off your main panel and turn on this. You'll get a little auxiliary panel that's going to power a handful of circuits in your house, like for your refrigerator, maybe your kitchen outlet, so you can still have some power. There's also standby generators that are powered by natural gas that will automatically, as soon as you lose the power, they'll automatically kick on. Now those are, you know, $4,000 to $5,000. They're much more expensive than, you know, a $300 generator.
Right. Well, driving down Ford Road, I mean, most of the buildings and the businesses were dark, and then you'd see, you know, a couple open signs.
Couple generators.
They were the ones that had the backup. We had an issue not too long ago at Mexican Fiesta with some colorful situation there. Can you talk to us about that and what happened?
It shows anything can happen at any time, anywhere. So our local Mexican Fiesta, Ford Road and Telegraph, it was dinner time, and a gentleman had some psychological issues, and he went behind IHOP, and they had a grease barrel there. He jumped in a grease barrel. So
he jumped into the grease barrel?
Into the grease barrel, full of grease,
you
know, cooking oil. He walked to a parked car, got on top of the car, started dancing around, and then he walked into the Mexican Fiesta. You could see the oil prints coming off of his feet. He went in there, grabbed some knives. He took a sip of...
They were butter knives.
Butter knives, but still, still a knife.
Absolutely.
Grabbed a beer of one of the patrons, got up on the bar and start yelling, screaming, telling everyone to leave, get out of the building now. And
you know, shirtless too.
Shirtless.
Remember that from Facebook?
So, just some shorts, and start yelling, and everyone ended up leaving. There were some videos out there on Facebook and on the news, and one gentleman on the video says something to the effect that, "Thank you, idiot, for wrecking my dinner."
Right, I heard.
Everyone had to leave, and then the officers went into the building. We had a K-9 there and a couple officers, and the gentleman didn't want to put the knives down, so he was eventually tasered, and that eventually took him down. And then a rescue assisted us, and he was transported to the hospital for psychological review. The people came back into the restaurant. Naturally, by then their food was cold, but Mexican Fiesta, the great restaurant they are, they took care of everyone. And some people they didn't charge for their bills. Some people they gave new food to. So they did good damage control.
On top of that.
But it just shows there are a lot of people out there with psychological issues, and at any time they can go off. Let it be a little restaurant, Mexican Fiesta, or let it be like we've seen shopping malls or whatever. So just a lot more of these type incidences with our reduction in mental health care, mental health facilities.
So it was more obvious that it was a mental health issue than a drug issue kind of thing. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We were talking a little earlier in the green room in regards to the issue of drug abuse within our community, which is extremely prevalent, and had 4 overdoses very recently within Dearborn Heights, which
last week
4 too many.
Yep, 4 too many. In the last week, we had 4 overdoses. These are not just kids; these are middle-aged people, and the firemen respond, and they have Narcan on their trucks, and that can help some people if we get there soon enough. That can bring them back and get them out of that overdose. But you're seeing more and more deaths. The drugs are out there. You see it on TV with the opioids. Opioids, hard to say. And
I couldn't pronounce that earlier, so opioids.
Pain pills and the heroin that's out there now. That's very, very popular. And when people can't afford the pills, then they go on to the heroin. That's a little cheaper, and it's mixed with fentanyl or cofentanyl, and they take it, and it's killing them.
We were talking earlier again. So they start with the heroin, and then it's mixed with the fentanyl, and now we're talking about the cofentanyl. So take us through that and how that chronological
the traditionally that had always been heroin, and that used to be considered such a hardcore drug that and it was always shot into your arm, and so there was a big leap to get to that, and now it's a lot easier. I think one of the reasons we're seeing this increase is because of the a lot of people are getting an addiction to pain pills, and for whatever reason they're getting these pain pills. A lot of times it's Vicodin. There are other ones that they Oxycontin, and they'll start with the pills, and they'll eventually be up to taking 14 pills a day. This is not that unusual, but this is a very, very common path. Most of the people that are dealing with a heroin addiction started with pills. The vast majority. They started with these pills because it seems like a innocent enough path, and they could even start crushing up the pills and kind of snorting the pills. And you can take heroin now the same way. They can snort the heroin in place of just jumping. So it's not like you went from smoking pot to then injecting heroin, because that's kind of a big leap, and so you didn't see as many people getting into heroin. Now it's a very almost easy natural path where you can wind up on heroin before just following the progression of the disease of the substance abuse. And so
what about people that are on pot? I mean, is that a route to heroin or less likely?
I don't know if it really there's conflicting. One part to me is pot's against the law, and so you're choosing to break the law with the drug, and so that just taking that mental step is going to make you one step closer to that. Whether there's an actual physical piece to that or not, there's lots of studies that depending on what side you're on, you can get the facts to say anything you want to say. Smoking pot I don't think is necessarily directly related to heroin, but if you have a person who's willing to break a law for a substance abuse,
it's a stepping stone. Yeah. It's a narcotic, and they progress to stronger.
Right.
Sure, absolutely.
So the difference is, though, it would just be heroin, and we have the drug Narcan, like you guys have been saying, and that's when initially we would get an overdose, or they come very, it'll knock out your drive to breathe, the heroin can. And so people will stop breathing, and obviously your heart's only going to last so long if you're not taking in any oxygen. And so that's how we find
and how is that
most of
fun?
the overdose.
How is that? a good thing.
Yeah.
$1,000,000
Go ahead.
question.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, and we found, like, we've had overdoses. People have shot up in the left turn lane at Warren and Telegraph, and then we find the car parked in the middle, and there's a needle in their arm, and they're passed out. And so they shot up right in the middle of traffic. So, but as far as the heroin itself, we would give Narcan, and they will jump right back up and wake back up. And then they introduce fentanyl, which is a painkiller that we can administer that as paramedics. It's a very potent painkiller. Even more, it's a little shorter acting than morphine, which is why we like giving it in the field. We can give someone and help them relieve their pain, and then when they get to the emergency room, we're not masking pain for some long term.
Right.
So
they
that
know what's going on.
Yeah. So it's a very effective drug. Unfortunately, they've taken that and mixed it with heroin, and when they do that, a lot of times overdoses will spike up in the area.
So is it cheaper that way, or is it just more for a different kind of high?
It's a more potent high.
Right.
Okay.
It adds, the drugs get diluted over the course, and the fentanyl adds and makes a higher high.
Right. And now you're not dealing with real chemists that are doing this either, and so that's why it's kind of a hit and miss kind of thing, and people don't know exactly what they're getting and what they're shooting up, and that's why you're getting these people that are overdosing. But again, we could wake them up with a Narcan. Well, now they've gotten to the carfentanil, which is a lot of people refer to it as the elephant tranquilizer. It's a large animal tranquilizer. Obviously, that is something that's so dangerous. If it can absorb through your skin, and so it's dangerous for police officers to be around it. Actually, the Michigan State Police will only respond to those calls now with the Western Wayne County Hazmat team to come and back them up so they could be there for decon purposes. And any canine dogs, they will absorb through their nose. And so we're extremely cautious. We make sure that our officer has been equipped with Narcan. I believe that this is something that a lot of the canine handlers have done, because they've had dogs that have overdosed from sniffing out these drugs and coming across
Well,
that.
you had mentioned that sometimes that doesn't work.
So we'll give 2 milligrams of Narcan to someone who's overdosed, and that does nothing. We'll give 2 more and 2 more, and a lot of times it would take up to 6 milligrams of Narcan just to get the patient to start breathing again. They don't even wake up, and so that's how strong these drugs are. We give them all the Narcan that we're carrying, and we could just barely get them breathing again, and then we take them to the hospital. And so that can cause shortages of Narcan, and when you're seeing these great big areas of these drugs that are moving into an area, sometimes you'll see the drug move in the area, and the overdoses will just spike up to an incredibly high level, and Narcan levels will start to get low in the hospitals, out in the field for the paramedics, and so it's a scary thing what's happening with all these opioids now.
Absolutely.
And with some of these drug abusers, they know that Narcan is out there and accessible to the fire department. So they're going to gamble and try to get a higher high, take more drugs, knowing that if the rescue gets
Rescue's
there,
on the way.
or some police departments, wherever, they might be able to save them. So the little gamble there is to try to get a more intense high. And like you said earlier, how is that fun? But I just, the epidemic that is out there today, and you've seen on the national news, they're trying to combat it with different policies. It's just a major epidemic.
So after they go through this process and the Narcan and what have you, so what is the legal ramifications when they survive it, I guess? What happens after that? I mean, what do we do with them in terms of the fact that these are all illegal drugs?
Basically, our goal is concern for their health and safety, along with the fire department. We get them to the hospital. Once they're in the hospital, if there are some drugs at the scene, we confiscate it, this and that. But our major goal is get them to the hospital, and then once they're there, we're hoping that the professionals there get them the treatment that they need. Let it be a clinic or a rehab center or something. I mean, if there are drugs left in the home, we look into it, or if we get a report that this person was selling drugs, we'll investigate that. But the number one goal and purpose is to assist the FD and get them to the hospital so they can get their medical help and hopefully get some help after that.
Okay, so legally, I mean, do they get in trouble? Do they look at
Not really.
jail
If
time?
it's in their system, we're not going to go and prosecute them. You know what? If we go in the house and there's a syringe or there's the drugs on a table,
Paraphernalia.
we're going to confiscate it. sure, we can charge them, but a lot of times you're there to get them to help. We're going to dispose of it, put it on evidence, you know, in the property room. But our main goal is to get them help, and hopefully through the hospital system, they can get some therapy.
So you're very involved in this concept. You were involved with the SAFE program through HYPE, and tell us a little bit about that. That was more sort of geared towards the teens.
Yeah, that was when we were working with HYPE, and that was with the juveniles and you know, the younger individuals, and we had some drug kits that we distributed for the parents. All we asked back then is if you used a drug kit and there was a positive reporting, just we wanted to keep a record of it so we know what was handed out and how many positive results. And you know, it was all done confidentially, and that was through HYPE. And then recently I've been working with Access. I wear my little wristband,
Yes.
ASAP, the Access Substance Abuse Program. So again, that is to educate our community, especially in the Middle East community. A lot of drug issues, a lot of addictions, and it's just something, and it's in all the communities. The families don't want to admit it. They don't want to bring it forward. They don't want to discuss it.
Sure.
And you know, there's a stigma with a drug abuse
But there
issue.
has been so many issues and so many overdoses within the Middle Eastern community too, that I think people are starting to wake up and saying, you know what, this needs to be a conversation, this needs to be on the table, because we're losing our kids basically across the board. And I don't think it has any economic, social, or
No, absolutely
or
not.
ethnic preference. It's
Last Saturday-
equal opportunity employer.
Yeah, last Saturday we set up a table with our group over at Greenland, Ford Road and Beach Daily. And we handed out some sunglasses and pencils and different pamphlets, keeping your teens drug free. And we had a table set up, and a lot of people come by. And a few of the young men there that came in, I asked them, I says, you know, what are the issues out in society? And they just said the abuse of marijuana in the high schools is just tremendous. Young man says, I'm an athlete, I don't touch that. He says, but I've got friends that were athletes, you know, potential for college, this and that. And he says they get into their marijuana and they lose their desire to study and to perform athletics. And it's just, you know, so many people are getting these medical marijuana cards, and I'm not an expert to say are they all needed. You know, I'm not a doctor, but I would surmise some of these individuals don't need it. You know, doctors issue them, but you just see so many of them, and to me, that's just leading to all these other future problems we're having.
And there's such a discussion there too in terms of the medical marijuana, because I've seen that it does help cancer patients.
Pros and cons, correct.
And so it's like, it's trying to find that happy medium and trying to find the right thing where it's not being abused. But I think in this case, it might be a total impossibility. But drugs come in all shapes and sizes and forms. And I know the issue of the hookah. We've talked about it before, but it is running rampant. And the sad part is it's become popular. I want to say in recent history, you know, the last 10, 15 years. So we're going to be starting to see the ramifications of those health issues. And they say, you know, you have one full hookah, it's like having 3 or 4 packs of cigarettes. So I know that you've got something on that.
It says right there in the thing, a smoker can inhale 100 times more smoke in one hookah session than in a single cigarette. So one cigarette versus a hookah session, which they say is roughly 30 to 40 minutes, 100 times more tobacco in their system.
So many of these hookah places are coming up, and they're very, very, very popular. So how do we get that message out, and what do we do? I mean, it's not illegal, right? And it's a social thing, and it's, you know, like going out, let's go get a hookah, and then you've got all the oranges and the strawberries, and I mean it's not a horrible thing, but how do we deal with this, and how do we address it?
I think the big thing is education. And, you know, a lot of that's has to come from the parents. You know, it's an older tradition, and the parents have done it. But now with all these studies, they've got to realize and tell their kids, you know, smoking, hookah, drinking, drugs, all that starts at home. Mom and dad's got to say, you know what, You think you're cool, you're doing it with your friends, but it's just going to cause a lot of long-term effects. And it's going to have a burden on our healthcare system when,
Absolutely.
you know, all the lung cancer and all the diseases,
COPD.
illness, that they project from continued use of the hookah and, you know, smoking and drinking and everything. So I think it's education. Maybe we need more billboards, more just public awareness in the school. Maybe in the schools there's got to be more health and education classes.
I know Access does a lot of stuff about education and hookah, and you know there's been a few billboards out there. I think I helped actually design one, but it is so prevalent. And you know what the thing is I've really seen within families is that it doesn't have the stigma as a cigarette would. So you would be more apt to see a 12 or 13-year-old sitting in the backyard with their parents smoking a hookah, because that's like, it's okay, it's not a big deal. But God forbid they put a cigarette in their mouth.
Right.
So again, it's that, you know, it's finding that balance.
Finding that balance.
Absolutely. I know you wanted to, before we wind up, you wanted to talk a little bit about an issue that's very near and dear, is our trash cans out there and our new trash cans that we have in regards to how to face them. Because I'm going, okay, what am I supposed to do towards the street or away from the street?
So we're making progress on it, but we still got a ways to go.
Yes.
So our trash cans, you know, cities put out numerous letters, and you know, some residents said they haven't been aware, they haven't received them, but we want your trash cans up on the city portion of the street. That will enable the plows, we haven't had no snow lately, and with the warmer weather coming, the street cleaners to go down the street, and with those trash cans being up on the lawn on the city strip, a foot or so away from the curb, they'll be able to clean our streets, keep our drains free, so when we get heavy rain, all that water will be able to flow down.
So is the open part towards the street?
And the open part is towards the street.
Okay, all righty. And the parking and all that stuff.
I think, I'm trying to think with the trash can, but it says on the can one side towards the street.
Right.
So I want to get all our
there's the little bar on the side of it. You can see when the truck comes, it hooks onto that little bar. So look for that little bar. So the handle should be facing the house, and that bar faces the street.
Okay. All right.
We have a lot of viewers out there. I know we're the #1 rated TV program around,
Yes,
so we want to
absolutely.
make sure we keep them informed. And then I'll move on to the segue with, also on trash day, the parking in the street. Remember, our ordinance says from the morning, either 7 or 8 a.m.
They
till,
come early.
Yep,
I mean, real early.
I believe it's 7 to 7, and so all the cars have to be off the street. Some people say, well, if they live on a corner, they park on a side street where the trash isn't. But the ordinance calls for any street within that trash pickup district for that day, no parking on the street. We ask you to park in the driveway, use your city approach, park on an angle, whatever. Just leave them off the street. We're still writing a lot of violations.
I was just going to ask how enforcing are you?
The enforcement is coming from, we ask our residents to call us. The officers aren't really going around and selecting cars. We're waiting until we get some calls that come in, and the neighbors call and say, hey, my neighbor's been out here. It's trash day. They haven't moved it. It's been 3 weeks now. On trash day, they parked there. We're going out and writing a violation. And then you have to take it up with the court. So no parking on the street. Put your trash cans up on your city strip about a foot away, and then we'll have nice clean streets this summer.
All right. Well, this has been really informative. The drug issue is something that we really need to keep an eye on. Is there any suggestion or advice that you would give to parents out there?
Just have a open and frequent. You don't just have one talk with your kids about that and be done. Talk with them about it all the time and find out. Be looking for things such as new friends, drops in grades, anything that might seem out of characteristic of the kids. Keep a very, very, very close eye on that and know who their friends are and where they're going, and talk with their friends' parents. And it's just all about communication and frequent communication.
Absolutely.
And if you suspect something, there are so many groups out there willing to help, willing to give you direction. So contact somebody.
Absolutely. There's Access, there's Safe, and some other individuals we can talk to. Stay safe out there. 4 overdoses is way too much for our community and other communities. So talk to your kids. This has been Chief Chat. Have a wonderful day.